Okay. So Oprah, I think that if I stopped 15 people on the street and asked them like, who's got it all figured out, who understands life, I think your name would be top of the list, because not only have you kind of talked about stuff you've been through, but you've also healed people, helped people heal. So, they say hurt people, and healed people, healed people. I couldn't help but thinking, as you're doing this kind of deep dive into mental health and into trauma, did you find as you were digging through all this that there was actually some grief inside you that had yet to be resolved, had yet to be healed?
I didn't find that, but you're just asking the question makes me emotional, because what I did find through the process of working on the Me You Can't See for Apple TV Plus, and also working on the What Happened to You book with Dr. Perry, there's a beautiful a poem called Yet Do I Marvel by County Cullen. And yet do I marvel at my life. I don't know how I did it. I mean, one of the conversations I had with Dr. Bruce Perry when we first decided to do this book, I asked him, tell me, then why aren't I crazy? And he pointed out that you had relationships in your life other than your family members that made you feel valued, that allowed you to be seen and whole. And that is why to this day, I have deep appreciation and adoration, not just for my teachers, but all teachers who are doing that. Because I know that lots of kids go home to a life that isn't so good, but they can come and sit in a classroom and be seen and be valued. And one of the great lessons for me, Hoda, as I know you're experiencing in your daily work, is that in listening to other people's stories, is that everybody wants to be seen, and they want to be heard, and they want to know that their story matters. And so all of our relationships are about that. So one of the reasons I do consider myself wise at this point in my life is because I've not only paid attention to my life, been observant of what's happened to me, but I've been a student of other people's lives and paid attention to what has happened to them. And we are just all on this spectrum. And that's one of the things I wanted to share in the What Happened to You book. And one of the things I wanted to share in the series, The Me You Can't See, is that we're all on the spectrum. And in the United States, Hoda, in the United States, 1 out of 5 people admit that they are going through some mental health struggle. So we're all on the spectrum. Some days you're 10 plus, most days I'm like traveling in the 11, 12 range and on a scale of 1 to 10. And some days you're 4 or -4, depending on what's going on in your life or what has happened to you or how you were able to process it. So that's what I wanted people to understand from both the book and the series.
Well, the book and the series are both so enlightening. And I was listening to one of your masterclass the other day, which I adored. But you said something in there that struck me. You said, I never had therapy. My show was my therapy. And I wondered since that point, have you had therapy? Do you feel like you ever wanted or needed it?
No. You know who was my therapist? Gail King. Because we talk in the book, What Happened to You, about how we process our feelings. And when something terrible has happened to somebody, and I remember this with Elizabeth Smart, I talk about in the book, when I went to interview her parents and they were saying she hadn't told us what happened yet. I was like, why not? Why haven't you heard? Why haven't you asked her? It's because when terrible things happen, even in our own lives that are not tragic things, but just like something with a boss or a bad experience, you do it in doses with your girlfriends, with your husband, with your partners and your relationships. You tell a little bit, then you laugh about something else, then you go back and you tell a little bit more about it, then you talk about it a little more, then you process it. So I've always been able to dose with Gail. And I would say in the 25 years of the show, she watched every show, and every night I would have my conversation that I now know the scientific term for it is I would do my dosing with Gail about it. So I've always had the ability to be vulnerable, to share my truest feelings with Gail, with my best friend Bob Green, with Maria, with people, Stedman, who actually were always willing to tell me the truth.
Right.
So no, I've never had a clinical therapist. I've never gone to a therapist. I've never laid on anybody's couch. I don't know if that's even real. Do you lay on the couch? But I have heard stories and shared stories and done exactly what we're trying to do with the Me You Can't See. I've seen myself in other people's stories. You know, the first time I was able to admit that I had been sexually abused, raped, assaulted as a 9-year-old happened on television. And it happened on television because a woman was sharing her story. And I thought, I swear, until that moment, I was the only person who'd ever had that happen to me. So in the middle of her in a show sharing her story, I went, that happened to me. And so that's how I got my therapy, because I've had every major dysfunction discussed on the air over the years, and would see myself in other people's stories. And just as we've been able to do, I think, with the series, The Me You Can't See, and use celebrities on purpose, Harry's story, my story, Glenn Close's story, Gaga's story, Damar's story, all there to show you that it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, how much money you have, that we're all in the spectrum with everybody else. That's why there are stories from people's names you know and people's names you don't know, but that are equally relatable.
Oprah, what did you learn about your childhood brain? What did you learn recently through this book about how your childhood brain was processing all of that terrible stuff that you had to go through as a child?
Such a good question. This book, the What Happened to You book in particular, made me think really differently about my own life. So I think that certainly all of the feelings of not fitting in, or my disease to please, or feeling like if I don't do what everybody wants me to do, I'm going to be rejected somehow, up until my 40s, literally, when I was running the Oprah show and in the power seat, I would have such angst about having to let somebody go who deserved to be let go, or having to be in a meeting with somebody who I was going to have to disagree with them. And what I realized after doing this book with Dr. Perry is that, what I was afraid of in every instance, I'm afraid I'm going to get a whipping. I'm afraid I'm going to get that whipping, even though I'm the boss lady, even though I'm the one in charge, even though I'm the one who's running the business. I still have that part of myself that until, my late 40s, almost into my 50s, I was still trying to process and figure that part of myself out. I mean, I knew that the reason I felt that way was because of what had happened to me. I just hadn't processed it. So I would say that the What Happened to You book really helped me think about my life. And also to understand that there must have been a lot of, I mostly remember the bad stuff, but there had to be a lot of good stuff for me to have turned out the way that I did, And I think so much of my sense of validation came from outside, like in the church. I was speaking by the time I was 3 or 4. And so I felt seen there. I felt seen by my, teachers. And, my grandmother, who was very harsh, but a lot of Black parents during that era. The idea of hugging and loving on your child, or even allowing the child to feel seen, was just not a part of her life. But she did give me Jesus. She did give me a belief in something bigger than myself. So I'm grateful for that.
I love how you said up till you were about 10, you thought Jesus was your daddy. I thought that was the best. You know what struck me? There were so many parts of this that struck me. When you went to go see your mom in Milwaukee for the very first time at age 6, and you were told that you could not come in the house to sleep because you were too dark. Your skin was too dark. You slept outside.
Yeah.
It struck me that you talked about a guardian angel, like you dreamt of an angel watching you. Did you believe?
I named her Melinda.
Melinda?
Yeah, I named her Melinda. Yeah.
Do you believe it was a real? I mean, to this day, do you think that there was really a guardian angel watching over you?
I absolutely do. I believe that my belief that there was is what saved my mind. I believe that if I had not believed that I had something bigger and greater than myself to protect me, then I would have lost my mind. I would have become bitter. I would have been really very angry with my mother, and I would have carried that bitterness in a way that would have affected my behavior in school. I would have been acting out. I would have been a different kind of person had I not had a belief in something that was bigger than myself. So do I believe the angel was there? I imagined that she was there. I literally would like see her on patrol. You know, in my own little 6-year-old mind, I would see her on patrol like she's there and she's taking care of me and I'm going to be okay, so that I could sleep at night. And I think now, knowing what I know about what happened to you, had I just slept there every night in the fear that I felt the very first night I arrived there, I wouldn't have survived it. I wouldn't have survived it. And I would have awakened every day just angry. But I didn't. I awakened with, okay, and then would get on my knees and pray at night. She's going to come back again and she's going to protect me. So yeah, I think the belief that she was real saved my mind.
How did you square the fact that you loved God so deeply and dearly, yet somehow these things bad things were just happening to you? How did you square those two?
I love this question, Hoda. There is a wonderful hymn that says, I wouldn't take nothing for my journey now, for my journey now, for my journey now. Maya Angelou actually wrote a book called Wouldn't Take Nothing for My Journey Now. And I wouldn't take anything for having been raised the way that I was and having the experiences that I did, because every one of them created what Bruce Perry calls in What Happened to You, post-traumatic wisdom. It is because I was sexually abused, raped at 9 and 10, 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 that I have such empathy for people who've experienced that. It is because I was raised poor and no running water and going to the well and getting whippings that I have such compassion for people who have experienced it. And so it has given me a broader understanding and a deeper appreciation for every little and big thing that I now have. And now this is what I just had this thought. So thank you so much for bringing it up. I had this thought after writing What Happened to You. I suddenly realized that being sent to live with my mother, which at the time felt like my grandmother is now abandoning me and sending me away. Oh my God, Hoda, I realized that was my saving grace, because otherwise I would have started school in Mississippi, segregated Mississippi, sitting in a classroom where I would be made to feel that I was less than the other children. Instead, I got shipped to Milwaukee and put in that kindergarten class where I already knew how to read because my grandmother gave me Jesus. I knew all the Bible stories and knew all the. So when I walked into kindergarten, I write my kindergarten teacher a letter and say, Miss New, I do not belong here because I know a lot of big words. And I write them out. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Joshua. And I got sent to the principal's office. So it wasn't until, and then moved to the first grade the next day. So I got myself out of kindergarten. But it wasn't until doing the big revelation for me is, even my grandmother becoming ill and not being able to take care of me in that particular moment is the thing that changed the trajectory of my life in that moment. I just thought, wow, I had never thought of that before. Like, whoa, what happened to me? Oh, I got sent away. I was no longer with my grandmother. And that is the thing that saved me. Because I would be a very different person had I been raised in a Mississippi school.
Oh my God, I want to weep right now. I'm having this big wave that's hit me. It's crashing on me. Oh, that's beautiful.
No, but that's what post-traumatic wisdom is. Yeah. It's like, oh, that thing happened. I thought it was a terrible thing. Yeah. I'm sleeping out on the porch. I felt separated, not a part of. That created a sense of, oh, I got to take care of myself.
Wow.
It's me and my angel team here. So all of it works out if you're open to see it.
Right.
If you're open to see what happened to you and let what happened to you allow you to recognize the me you can't see, because they're all connected.
Let's talk for a second about Prince Harry. He spoke out, and for people to get rid of that stigma of mental health, people have to speak out, and Prince Harry has been speaking out. And with his speaking out, Oprah, he's gotten some criticism. I don't know whether it's for speaking out too much. He asked for privacy, and now people feel like they're seeing him everywhere. What are the critics not understanding about what's going on?
I think privacy, I ask for privacy, and I'm talking all the time. So I think being able to have a life that you are not intruded upon by photographers or people flying overhead or invading your life is what every person wants and deserves, is not to be intruded and invaded upon. And I think when they say they wanted privacy, that is what they were asking for. But one of the reasons from the very beginning, when I had one of my early conversations with Harry about what do you think are the two most important issues facing the world now? And he said, climate change and mental health. And I said to him, oh, well, I'm doing the series on Apple TV Plus, and started talking about it. And then he said, well, when I turned to leave, Hoda, he said, well, if you ever need any help with that, let me know. And I went, did you say, did I need some help? And so his interest and partnership was really authentic and about his desire to champion these conversations. And so I think that you're asking for privacy in your own personal life does not mean that you don't want to also use your platform to help the world see itself differently. And I think that is also one of the reasons, Hoda, that Harry and I wanted to include Harry and I and the whole Radical team, all of us working on this, wanted to include people who were known and people who were not known. Because, what I think celebrity is good for, what you're being known is good for, is for people to be able to see themselves in you. I mean, that's what it is. It is being able to say, oh, if that is possible. And the same thing is true whether you are being celebrated for something that's accomplished or being acknowledged for being open and vulnerable about something that is meaningful to you. That happened to me too. So I'm hoping that's what people will come away from. And I'm hoping that people, understand that for them, privacy means not being invaded, not being intruded, but they are public figures who are going to use their platform to speak to the world. And I'm sure we will continue to hear from them. They didn't mean we're going to go. Privacy doesn't mean silence. That's what people are missing. Privacy doesn't mean silence.
When they did their interview with you, Oprah, and you've, I'm sure, spoken to them since, obviously, did they, reflecting on it, did they have any regrets about sitting down and talking about their lives?
They have not shared any regrets with me. We had a conversation prior to the interview where I do this with every single person I ever speak to about something important. And I started doing it on my show like around 1989, I think, going into the green room and saying to the person, tell me what you want. What do you want to happen here? What do you want to come out of this interview? And we didn't meet before, but we texted, and both of them shared that they wanted the truth. And they wanted truth, and they wanted healing, and they wanted this to be, an open conversation, and that there was nothing off limits. And this is my number one goal, was I understood what had happened to them, and I wanted the rest of the world to come away being able to answer the question, oh, now I understand what happened. So the question was, why did they leave? That was the number one question that I wanted to have answered. And I think by the time that interview was done, people understood.
Oprah, did you think that Harry was caught off guard by anything that Meghan said during the interview? Was he surprised by anything?
Let me just tell you, that couple is one of the most in sync couples I've ever seen. I mean, it is a joy to see them together behind the scenes. And so I think that they have not shared this with me, but I think that they would have not just shared their intention with me, but they would have had a conversation about what they both wanted to accomplish in that interview. So.
Well, Oprah, this was great. I love you. I wish we had more time, but I always want more time with you. And
wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.